Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and from viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, president of LPB, and joining me to explore ways to lift up our state's low-wage workers is one of LPB's news anchors, Andre Morwa.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good to be with you, Beth. Thank you. You know, it's been since last month that the United Way released its report on Louisiana's working families. It notes that 2/3 of jobs in Louisiana pay less than $15 an hour. That's a challenging wage for a household that includes children. Now, this session, Governor John Bel Edwards will be pushing for an increase to the minimum wage from $7.25 to $8.50 an hour.
You know, Andre, raising the minimum wage may be the best way to lift Louisiana residents out of poverty, but is it the best option? Many high-paying jobs remain unfilled in the state because employers can't find skilled workers. Tonight, we bring together anti-poverty advocates and state leaders in business, employment, and skills training to look at opportunities that help the working poor move beyond the minimum wage. Grace Bailey's weekly routine begins with a trip from her Lafayette home to LSU.
2 days a week I'm in Baton Rouge on Mondays and Tuesdays, 8:30 to 3:30. And then Wednesday, Thursdays, I'm interning at the Family Tree as a clinician, so all day long doing counseling work. From there, we'll either teach a yoga class, and then Friday, same thing, and then I go and do my meditation group, Saturday teachings.
A single mother raising a 9-year-old, Bailey is working on a master's degree in social work. Despite holding down 2 jobs, she constantly faces financial anxiety.
The cost of living is extremely high, and so paying rent is always an issue. And I try to budget out in advance, but things come up. My car battery died the other day trying to get up and go to Baton Rouge. I don't know how I'm going to pay for that.
Bailey's a member of the state's working poor, overlooked by traditional poverty classifications. The United Way identifies these individuals as ALICE.
ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed, and it counts the people not just under the poverty line, but a little bit above that line who are still working and but still having a lot of trouble making ends meet.
Jan Moeller heads the Louisiana Budget Project. He notes that Louisiana has the nation's second largest poverty rate. But while 19% of residents live in poverty, another 29% qualify as ALICE.
So when we think of poverty in Louisiana, we really think about half the population has trouble meeting their basic needs on a month-to-month, week-to-week basis, and that probably needs some sort of hand up in order to survive.
Some of those hand-ups include Louisiana's expansion of Medicaid and the recent increase of the Earned Income Tax Credit for low-wage earners. Another boost for the working poor, Moeller says, would be to raise the minimum wage. This session, Governor John Bel Edwards will be pushing for a $1.25 increase phased in over 2 years.
The federal minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 since 2009, and it has lost a lot of its purchasing power in those years. So raising it to $8.50 an hour is only going to recover a little bit of what we've lost over the past decade, and we frankly think it needs to go a lot higher.
Bureau of Labor statistics indicate that only 40,000 Louisiana workers earn at or below the minimum wage. But a bump for them will likely mean raising other workers' pay. Small business owners worry how to afford that, says Renee Amar with the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry.
If I'm making $9 and now I've been at the business for 6 months or a year and the person next to me just got a raise, not by doing anything materially, right? They're not being more productive. You know, nothing's really changed. I'm probably going to want to raise too, you know, and so it's this upward pressure of wages is what it causes.
Amar says companies are leery of an across-the-board wage increase that applies to every type employer. That situation, Moeller says, can be easily resolved.
Louisiana was one of the first states in the country in the 1990s to pass a state law that forbids cities and municipalities from deciding on their own what the minimum wage should be. So if we lifted that preemption law, every city in the state could decide for themselves if they want a minimum wage, because it may not be a case where one size fits all.
Arkansas, a state with a poverty level close to Louisiana's, has seen 2 minimum wage increases approved by voters since 2014. While Lamar admits a small bump won't break Louisiana's economy, the measure overlooks a better remedy for the working poor.
How do we transition these people from these minimum wage jobs, get them the training that really is going to lift them out of poverty? Because, right, giving me, probably $40 a week is, probably going to be helpful. But if I could make another, $200, $300, $500 a week rather than 40, that's life-changing for me.
In Louisiana, by the year 2020, which is upon us, 53% of the jobs that are out there are going to need some kind of post-secondary degree, a credential, a regular college degree, or something like that. The problem we have in Louisiana is that only about 45% of our population have that degree or credential.
Barry Irwin heads the Council for a Better Louisiana. He says that the Louisiana Community and Technical College system is combating the state's education gap through programs like Work Ready U, that puts adults re-entering school on track to a career, and Jumpstart, which helps students get certified in a trade.
What we're really trying to focus on with the Jumpstart program is getting kids while they're still in high school to get a credential that's leading to a high demand job, a high quality job, and a job that really pays a good salary.
There are also challenges on the employment side. A Louisiana Budget Project report indicates that of the state's top 10 job growth occupations, half pay below the poverty level for a family of 4. In the spring, Bailey will graduate. She plans to help others like herself who face financial uncertainty.
When you're impoverished, there's almost more expenses. So applying for credit cards or interest is going to be higher. You're driving a car that has a lot of mileage on it. And so having to repair those parts constantly. There's so many things about being impoverished that become more costly in the long run. It's expensive to be poor.
Helping us now to explore those costs of poverty and how to overcome them is our studio audience. It includes representatives from the United Way, Louisiana Budget Project, and the National Federation of Independent Businesses. We also have a graduate from Associated Builders and Contractors, plus 2 college students and Legislative Youth Advisory Council members. I want to welcome everyone here. Each year, LSU's Public Policy Research Lab surveys residents around the state. In 2016, it asked questions concerning reducing poverty. And among its findings, when asked which is generally more often to blame if a person is poor, 49% of the respondents said lack of effort on their part. 43% said circumstances beyond their control. Yet on the wealth side, 50% of those surveyed said the rich got that way because they had more advantages in life. 41% feel it's because they worked harder than most people. When asked their opinion on raising the minimum wage in Louisiana from $7.25 to $8.50 an hour, 76% of those responding favor the move, while 22% oppose it. And when asked about requiring employers in Louisiana to pay men and women the same amount for the same job, that's a measure that the governor may propose this session. 91% support the idea, just 7% oppose it. So let's now start with your thoughts and what you're thinking to help Louisiana's working poor. And this, of course, is from your experience and your perspective. What do you think is the best solution? Let's start right here with Danny. Danny, introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from and which organization you're with.
Sure. I'm Danny Mintz with the Louisiana Budget Project, and I'm up from New Orleans. I think that the problems facing the state's working poor have everything to do with the wages that people are paid at the lower end of the wage scale. I'm an anti-hunger policy advocate with the Budget Project, and one thing that we know about the population on food assistance is that 2/3 of people receiving food stamps are either disabled, elderly, or children, and of the remaining third, most people do work. And what that means is that the wages they have aren't enough to support them or their families. So I think the reason that there's such overwhelming support for an increase in the minimum wage is that people realize that $7.25 an hour simply isn't enough to support oneself or one's family in today's Louisiana.
And that is certainly the crux of the work, among other things, that Louisiana Budget Project does. It keeps you busy, I'm sure, talking with people all over the place. Let's go to Josh now. And Josh, tell us your full name, where you're from, and who you're representing.
Okay, my name is Joshua Shavers. I am from Denham Springs, Louisiana, and I'm here today on behalf of XL Construction and ABC, which is Associated Builders and Contractors, their Pelican chapter.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this situation?
So coming out of high school, college wasn't the route for me. Do I support it? Absolutely. If that's the route for somebody, but not everybody has that opportunity. ABC offers a high school outreach, and so they sponsor high school students to get involved, something for them to do to learn a trade, because a lot of times in high school, either they're thinking, hey, I'm going to college or I'm not, and they think if they're not going to college, that's the end of the route. And that's not the case. So what ABC offered through contractors, being able to sponsor that individual, is they offered opportunity for you to learn a trade. I graduated high school, and the cool thing about the route I went after high school was I didn't have to pay a penny for any of my training, because I have construction companies that are out there that sponsor you to be able to if you have the want to, they'll sponsor you to go through a training. Like I said, through ABC is where I went, and I never paid a penny for any of my training, but I got a trade behind me that nobody will ever be able to take away. And from that, you can progress and grow, and it opens up a whole new ladder for you and your family, for your finances. And the good part about it is, once I'm actually in that industry, creating an income to support my family, I don't owe anybody any money either.
Let's talk to Michael now. Tell us your full name, where you're from, who you represent.
So I'm Michael Williamson, I serve as President and CEO, United Way of Southeast Louisiana.
And what are your solutions that you have for this problem?
I think it's an interesting debate. I think while we can discuss how do we raise the wages, and our United Way has been supportive of some minimum wage increases, and we're involved in those discussions now, we also believe strongly in innovative approaches to creating pathways to economic opportunity to allow folks to acquire the high wage, high demand jobs that are being created in our communities. And so things like SNAP employment training, which we're working on, more effective ways to address returning citizens who are coming out of prison, they have skills, but there are barriers to employment. But if you help them overcome those barriers, they can get those higher wage jobs and actually earn enough to support their families.
Okay, all right, very good. Now let's go to Keisha right here. Again, your full name, where you're from, who you represent.
I'm Keisha Williams. I am originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. I represent Teaching Care, LLC, my own business.
All right, and so with teachers, they're constantly struggling for more pay, et cetera. What are some of the solutions that you...
Actually, I'm in healthcare.
Healthcare, okay.
And the concept where I came up with Teaching Care is because there's no care in healthcare.
Oh, very good, okay. As a business owner, what are your thoughts on raising the minimum wage?
I think it's a good idea. Being a person that started out in high school as a CNA, a nursing assistant, and then worked my way through doing the technical college as an LPN, I really didn't have a lot of student loans. So I figured out a way to actually go back into the technical college setting, get the nursing degree, went back to school and got my registered nurse degree.
Okay, very good.
So once I was able to do that, I was able to actually start a business and help other nurses start businesses, as well as nursing assistants as well that do sitting businesses. Also show them how to budget. Because the biggest thing is to have the overhead to also pay yourself and have your staff paid for. So for me, the minimum wage increase, starting out as a $4.25 worker in 1998, now we're in 2019 and we're just at $7.25. That's a problem.
Let's go to Benjamin now. Tell us where you're from, who you represent.
I'm Ben Zucker, and I'm with Step Up Louisiana.
Okay. Your solutions, your thoughts about this?
So we gotta raise the minimum wage. I mean, $7.25 an hour is not enough for anyone to be able to make ends meet. When we're talking about buying food and paying rent, paying for childcare and transportation, it just doesn't add up. And the state of Louisiana has the power to be able to really improve the lives for so many workers. And we can talk a lot about, on-the-job training and try to move people out of minimum wage jobs. But the reality is that most minimum wage workers are adults with kids of their own. And then even if some folks are able to move out of those jobs into better careers, and I hope we're able to find ways for people to do that, those workers are still working those minimum wage jobs. And at Step Up Louisiana, our members, our parents, and low-wage workers, and they believe that if we can stick together, we can work with folks in our government to be able to reduce poverty and help our community.
Okay, talking about looking for solutions, ideas to help those who need help. Let's go to Nadia. Nadia, where are you from and who you represent?
I'm Nadia Cooper. I'm from St. James Parish, and I also represent Legislative Youth Advisory Council.
Okay.
Well, I think that minimum wage should be raised, and I also think that we should help people find better ways to get better jobs. Because coming from my personal standpoint, I work a minimum wage job, and it doesn't cover everything that I need, because my mom's working, but I'm also working, but we can't also pay for everything that is out there. Let's face it, in high school, you can't expect to get a job like in a chemical plant or something high. You have to start from a minimum wage job. So therefore, you have to like accommodate everybody when it comes to minimum wage, and also with helping people to get better jobs. Like from high school, you need to get programs to help those people, and also with adults. But just coming from my experience, minimum wage should be raised.
Okay, what you're talking about reminds me of something that Sarah Berthelot with United Way works with so much, and the Alice Project. So we know you, Sarah, and what's on your heart this evening?
Well, I think we've had some really good comments shared tonight. One thing that is on my mind is the need for parents to access quality child care. Affordable child care is oftentimes the pathway for a parent to work, to continue school, to access training, so that they can position themselves better for a living wage job. 2 out of every 3 children in our state have either both parents or they're single parent in the workforce or in school. So many parents in our workforce are needing to have sound, reliable, quality care, not only to give their kids a great start in such an important developmental time of their life, but it helps them to have what they need as a family to be successful in the workforce. Programs like the Child Care Assistance Program, which is a state-funded program that provides supports to working parents in affording and accessing quality care. That particular program has experienced dramatic cuts over the past couple of years, once serving 40,000 kids, young children, to less than 20,000 young children. And so these changes, the reduction of funding to programs like the Child Care Assistance Program, is absolutely having an effect on parents in the workforce, parents accessing training and continuing education in order to better position themselves to higher paying jobs.
And those reductions, that's something that Louisiana has suffered with on many fronts for years and years and years. Well, that is all the time we have for this portion of our show. But when we come back, we're going to be joined by our panel of experts as we look beyond the minimum wage. Welcome back, everyone, to Louisiana Public Square. Tonight we are exploring the efforts to assist the state's working poor. And joining us now is our panel of experts. Senator Troy Carter is a Democrat from New Orleans who serves as vice chair of the Committee on Labor and Industrial Relations. He has sponsored bills to raise the minimum wage for the past 3 years and plans to do so again this year. Also with us, Dawn Starnes. She has served as state director of the National Federation of Independent Business, or NFIB, since 2014. She leads lobbying efforts on behalf of NFIB's 4,000 small businesses. They represent every sector of Louisiana's economy. Ava Desjois was appointed Secretary of the Louisiana Workforce Commission by Governor John Bel Edwards in 2016. As Secretary, Desjois is responsible for providing the strategic vision to boost the growth of Louisiana's economy and its workforce. And Dr. Monty Sullivan is president of the Louisiana Technical and Community College System and oversees the 13 institutions that it cares for around the state. He has been nationally recognized for the growth of student enrollment at record numbers and also of graduates. And before we go to our audience for questions, which we will have many of, I want to ask each of our panelists, from your perspective, what letter grade would you give the state for assisting its working poor? And Mr. Carter, let's begin with you.
I would say that we get a strong C. And I say a C because I think we certainly have made strides in the right direction. We're far from having an A, which denotes excellent. I think our intent is good. We're good students, but we need to work harder. The will is there. The governor certainly has stood strong. Lots of members of the legislature has, but not enough to get it over the goalposts.
All right, thank you very much. Dawn Starnes?
Hi, thanks. I would probably say maybe an incomplete. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that as small business owners across the state that we represent, we're out there trying to create jobs and be there for the people who work for us. Most small businesses are family-owned businesses and been around for years, and they treat their employees like family. And so everybody's trying to do their part to be doing the right thing and to be involved. But there's certainly efforts that can be put forth both at the state level and on the personal side and personal responsibility side that could definitely help things move forward in the state.
All right, ask the same question to Ava Desjois.
I would say to be determined. I think we have a lot more work to do. We're on our way, but certainly there are more things that we can do. Investing in education, which has happened for the first time after many years under Governor Edwards. That did not take place in the previous administration. Also, when we look at workforce, Louisiana is one of the few states that does not have a state dedicated revenue stream for workforce. We depend on federal dollars. We certainly can do more for the working people of Louisiana, but we're headed in the right direction. After many years of not heading that way, there's a resurgence of apprenticeship, and all of those tools combined will get us to where we need to be.
All right, and you, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you to LPB for hosting a very important discussion of the people of Louisiana. I would say that we've made tremendous progress. Our challenge for many years has been that we started from a very difficult place. We have so many people who have been impoverished over the years that the education and training efforts that we've had in place, the efforts to lift people out of poverty, I think have been excellent. So the work over the last few years, I would certainly say, is a solid B. But we started from a deficit, and so one of those examples is our community and technical college system. So we're excited about where we are today and the progress that's been made, but we have a great deal of work to do.
Thank you, Dr. Monty Sullivan. Everyone, let's go to our audience. They've got some questions, they've got some concerns, and let me begin with Devontae. And tell us where you're from, Devontae, and who you represent.
Alrighty, I'm Devontae Lewis. I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I work at the Louisiana Budget Project. We know 1.5 million working adults have a high school diploma or less in this state. We know the rising cost of college, the rising cost of community college, the more student loan debt that is increasing. People just cannot work their way through college the way they did in the 70s and the 80s. And so when we are talking about creating more jobs and creating a business climate that makes our communities thrive, we know it's with an educated workforce. So how do we not pit our citizens from having to choose between making ends meet by working 2 minimum wage jobs or the opportunity to advance their lives by going and get an education or a certificate program or an associate's degree? How do we mesh that? We have a population that can't afford to attend college, but we know we need to get them some type of training or workforce or a different type of degree. How do we solve that problem?
Do you have someone in particular you want to answer it?
I think certainly apprenticeship is one of those answers. It's earn while you learn. Just this week, we will have our first Apprenti Louisiana with jobs in IT. Folks have gone into training for 3 months, and then they'll go into the workforce and then transition back out to training, earning $15 an hour. But they can earn wages in excess in just a few years of $100,000 per year. We have lots of apprenticeship programs going on with the community and technical college system, but it represents a partnership between education, business, and workforce. And I believe that's the key. In fact, American CEOs are turning more to apprenticeship. It's hundreds of years old. It's what's used widely in Europe, and I believe it's certainly a key component that we want to see come back.
Absolutely. Okay. Just one quick additional response. I want to thank you for all the great work that you guys are doing in making public those numbers and talking about the working poor in Louisiana. A couple of key points that I think are very important. Earn while you learn is one direction that we are embracing in community and technical colleges, but I'd also tell you that education and the way education is delivered is changing. Many of our students are opting for a shorter time frame of education, which means that they have fewer and fewer obstacles, because completion is less about academics and more about time. And so managing life cost and managing the hurdles that someone has to overcome for the period of time that they're enrolled, that's the key. And so as we talk about affordability, to broaden the lens, not just for tuition and fees, but for the life cost, because that's really the challenges that our poor are facing.
I'm going to ask you a quick question. Sure. This week at the Baton Rouge Press Club, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid was speaking about Louisiana's community and technical colleges, and she said the cost of those in Louisiana is more expensive than other states.
Sure.
Is that
so,
correct?
First of all, I think Dr. Reid's comments were really geared toward trying to identify one of those hurdles that we're talking about here, and we're working very closely with the Board of Regents and with Dr. Reid to try to create a circumstance where our students are able to access. Our Board of Supervisors for the last 5 years have not raised fees, have not raised tuition. That has been a key focal point for us. We've also elevated opportunities for adults with financial aid. We've created an adult promise program this time that is allowing adults, 27, 28-year-old adults, to be able to access education. So we are very much focused on lowering the cost to individuals who are the very populations that we're talking about here, the Alice population, just as an example. So we're very much interested, as we sat today and talked with Dr. Reid, about what are those next steps to ensure access.
What are the barriers to increasing the minimum wage? What's the biggest hurdle that is keeping that from happening?
I'll jump in. I think one of the biggest barriers is, for some reason, some of our friends seem to think that the world will come to an end. If we increase the minimum wage, somehow businesses are going to flee. Businesses are going to go to other states where minimum wage is lower. Well, guess what? You won't find any lower than us. And the reality that the world will come to an end if we increase minimum wage just hasn't proven to be true. Every time the minimum wage has increased from $2.95 to $3.10 and on and on and on, those who said that it was going to be bad were proven to be wrong. If we look at everything in society, the price of milk, the price of bread, the price to educate your children or to have daycare, everything has increased. What job would you work on and never have a pay raise for 10 years that you've put in the time? I dare say any of our opponents, and I respect them all, although we disagree, I would ask, would you stay in your current employment if you never had a pay raise? Yet everything around you, cost of living, continues to increase. So I guess the greatest barrier is those who somehow suggest, without, in my estimation, very respectfully, giving solid facts, because it doesn't bear out. Businesses that pay minimum wage, many of which have come and testified before our committees, and they say, listen, we pay our employees more than minimum wage, and we get good, solid employees. We get people who are dedicated. We get people who stay around. We don't have that revolving door. So I think the barrier is misinformation, quite frankly.
Okay. Don, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts, if you would respond, react, and give your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so again, we definitely respect one another, but disagree on the subject of where small business falls on this issue. And it comes down to the fact that for a small business owner, which is very different than a large business owner, than a large corporation. They are going to do business differently when it comes to labor cost. And whenever you force down arbitrarily higher labor costs on a small business owner, they're already doing what they can to make their bottom line work, to keep employees working. They're doing everything to keep their doors open and create jobs. So the second you put down arbitrary new cost, labor costs, which is very expensive, on them, they're going to have to make decisions, and they're going to make one of few decisions. One is, do I cut hours on those hourly employees? Do I choose cheaper labor, as in part-time, or go to less expensive labor in the sense that they're going to go get somebody with even less experience, or do I cut jobs? Because at the end of the day, a small business owner, a true small business owner, is there following their dream. They've put in the effort, they've put in the time, they've put in the cost to make it work, to go open those doors every day and do what they love. And as a benefit of that, they've created jobs, they've created an atmosphere that's positive, that they're doing whatever that it is they love to do. But they can't have government constantly putting down mandates that are arbitrary, and a increase in labor cost is arbitrary. Because as the senator said, he's right, a lot of small business owners, you ask them today, they're going to tell you they pay above minimum wage because they have to compete, they have to do that. But it's a small segment of folks that don't have any skills, that need entry-level work, like high school students, who need to have a place to start. But that labor is necessarily less expensive than a skilled worker coming out of a certification program or somebody else. And then the ripple effect that we talk about all the time.
And you've mentioned, of course, about that cost rising, but it has not risen at the minimum wage in 10 years. And you mentioned some of the other manufacturing and product costs. What are some of those, and how does that factor into the concerns?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if a restaurant owner is going to have to pay a higher minimum wage to all of their workers, they're going to increase the cost of the food. But the other thing that's always going up is the cost of food. To the senator's point, the milk, bread, eggs, all those things that people use in a restaurant is constantly going up because of the bigger market issues. So there's that ripple effect. And so what we've got to figure out is, where do we focus in our energy and attention? And instead of kind of honing in on this one thing that says, oh, let's do $1.50, it's $1.50 an hour is not going to raise anybody out of poverty over the next year or so. So what do we really need to be doing as a state to do that? And small business owners, one of our biggest issues right now, one of our top priorities, is not having skilled workers, not having people with soft skills or particular skills to be able to fill the jobs that they have open. And so that's what we have to really find an answer to.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to our student audience for a second, and we all have plenty of time to talk. Emmanuel, we haven't heard from you yet. Tell us where you're from and who you're representing.
Okay, my name is Emmanuel Mitchell. I'm representing Step Up Louisiana. I'm also a council representative with the Central South Carpenters.
And for those that don't know, what is Step Up Louisiana? What exactly is done?
Step Up Louisiana, we fight for higher wages across the board. We fight for the poor, to get out of poverty. They fight for teachers' rights, equal pay for men and women, and just a community-based organization.
What is your question for one of the panelists?
My question for the panelists, we all know that minimum wage need to be raised, and I say it need to be raised as a living wage for people, because we all know after Katrina, businesses was trying to come back, and they did offer a higher wage living at that time. But now it seems as though that business is back and the wages drop. And why is that?
Secretary?
Well, Emmanuel's, the value of the minimum wage has decreased by nearly 20%. So that $7 is worth less than $6 right now. So it has gone down. And while it may not, an increase, a modest but meaningful increase, may not move everyone out of poverty, it's going to move people closer to being out of poverty. And we have to take modest but meaningful steps. It's not the goal to put anyone out of business, but the minimum wage is not currently, records from Louisiana's employers bear out that it is not an entry-level wage. Nearly 20% of our workers remain at that wage for over a year, and it's primarily women over the age of 24, women taking care of children, which means our children suffer. So anything we can do to help our children will make a difference. It is not something that is not business friendly. It is an opportunity for businesses to help individuals be more productive, be available to work. If you don't have childcare, if you're not well, you can't come to work. And Louisiana's labor force participation really lags behind that of the nation, but the labor force participation rate of this country has decreased for the last 30 years. And one of the reasons is those that do not find it beneficial to really enter the labor force because they can't afford to work. How sad is it that someone can't afford to work? And when the minimum wage goes up, people can't afford to work.
Dawn, you mentioned some of the skills that are lacking, need to be improved, need to be sharpened, need to be done. Doctor, let me ask you, what is the community technical college, what's it doing to address that? And is there an upward rise where you're seeing progress?
Absolutely. One of the greatest stories I think that Louisiana has to tell is a 20-year story of the creation of community and technical colleges that are providing opportunities to people all over the state. We have campuses in 53 of the 64 parishes, attempting to eliminate some of the geographic disparities that we have in Louisiana to provide opportunities in every place so that everyone has an opportunity to get to that middle class status. This year we're on pace for nearly 30,000 graduates. 30,000 graduates that on average will earn $45,000 a year. When you think about our per capita income at just over $25,000, nearly doubling the per capita income by completing an associate degree or a short-term certification at one of our community or technical colleges, it's a game changer. It changes the entire discussion around childcare, around transportation, around food security. So we couldn't be more proud of the work that we've done, but the reality is we have much more work to be done. We're working very closely with a number of our partners in the Workforce Commission and DCFS and others to provide opportunities for our students to have benefits like SNAP, like healthcare benefits on the college campus, because it's a short-term opportunity to provide a benefit to someone who is helping themselves to move out of poverty. 20 years, I can't wait to see what the next 20 years will hold for Louisiana's people as a result of the education and training happening at our colleges.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to our audience. And Spencer, we haven't talked to you yet. Tell us your full name, who you represent, where you're from.
I'm Spencer Heitman. I'm with the Legislative Youth Advisory Council.
And you have a question for one of the panelists?
Yes, so minimum wage is an issue where I find myself somewhat perplexed because on one hand I feel like too immediate or drastic a change could have some harsh economic impacts, but at the same time I acknowledge that the Fair Labor Standards Act hasn't been changed since 2009, so our minimum wage has been stagnant while our cost of living has increased steadily. So I wanted to know where you as professionals would draw that line and find the balance between the change that needs to be made and is adequate versus the change that is excessive.
I'll tell you, we are starting and proposing, as we have for the last several years, an increase of $1.25. And while my colleague said that $1.25 won't raise anybody out of poverty, ask those people who are making $7.25 if they'd like to have a little bit more. A little bit more adds up. It certainly will not pull you completely out of poverty, but it's better than the status quo. So to look at $8.50 over a 2-year period, I think, is woefully short of where we should be, quite frankly. But I was on WWL radio show some time ago, and a very conservative listening audience. And someone called in and said, "Senator, why are you going for such a small amount of money?" My comment was, have you been to the Louisiana legislature lately? You've got to get what you can get. And while I think we all agree that we should have a much higher living wage, we have to do it in incremental steps because some success is better than no success. Minimum wage was once considered an entry-level job, a job for a high school summer worker or for a college student. Now you've got working parents that are competing for those jobs at McDonald's or Burger King because the economy suggests that that's all that's there. We look at some 70 to 80% of every poll that's taken have people saying that they're supportive of a minimum wage. So if we say that 50% of our economy is built on small businesses, that means that a substantial amount of those small businesses are polling in favor of a minimum wage. So that kind of debunks the theory that this is going to hurt small businesses when a very large percentage of small business owners recognize the value of increasing minimum wage, having a true living wage, giving people an opportunity to earn a good living and to fend for themselves. If we really want to make a healthy community and we want to lift everybody up, this notion to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mean nothing if you have no boots. So we have to start somewhere. So while I think the 850 is not where it should be much higher. Incrementally, it's a step in the right direction.
Dawn, what about the small businesses? What are they saying there?
Yeah, and I think you're right to be perplexed. It is a hard issue because you're right. It is going to affect the economy, and unfortunately, Louisiana's economy is not growing. And so it's great to say that other states are doing it and what have you, or this is the move, or whatever the trend might be. But the bottom line is Louisiana's economy is not growing at the rate it needs to be growing. And so again, to force down this arbitrary number is putting additional labor costs and making business owners make decisions. We poll our members. We have 4,000 members across the state of Louisiana. 90% of them tell us they don't want to have a state minimum wage, because another key factor that everybody needs to understand without getting too far into the policy and boring everybody is that Louisiana does not have its own state minimum wage. We follow what the federal government does. And so if the federal government, right now they're looking at passing something, if they do decide to pass it, then Louisiana would pick that up. Our neighboring states, other than Arkansas, pay $7.25 an hour as well as minimum wage. They have the same minimum wage. Arkansas is the only one who has just recently increased it as far as our neighbors go. And the other part of that is that the business climate in Louisiana is not as the best as it possibly could be. And so if we make steps to improve our business climate, we could definitely do other things. But when you don't have kind of all the ideal things kind of happening at one time, but push down one other thing, it doesn't make it all work.
Would that be something the state would be giving up to the federal government, though? And they would be telling the state what to do?
So right now we're basically, I believe it's one of 13 states that just do what the federal government has, and then there's other states that have their own minimum wage based on.
Do people feel that's working?
Not
I know you don't.
Clearly it isn't.
I know you don't.
But isn't it also cyclical that if more people are working, more people are spending money in the economy, and you talk about growing an economy, you grow an economy by having working people that are investing in the community, people that can buy homes, people that can buy cars, people that can educate their children, people who can afford to go to the local stores and buy groceries. And I'm not talking about people who are dependent on social assistance. I'm talking about people who bridge the gap, hardworking people who have to have minimum wage and social assistance just to get by. Many of those people would gladly give back social assistance to be able to pay their own way, to feel good about themselves. That's when we start to build a strong economy. We start to build a strong economy when people are able to purchase goods and services. And you can only do that if you're earning them.
Ava?
But respectfully, and I'm chomping at the bit, because Louisiana's gross domestic product is outpacing the nation. The latest figures for which we have a quarter is the second quarter of 2018, and we came in second in the nation behind Texas. So to say that there's not a positive business climate here, I think is not correct given our gross domestic product, given the fact that we're second in the nation right now. In fact, in 2018, we had a record number of people employed in April, the highest number ever. We're at full employment. We are slightly above that of the nation, but for Louisiana, which has never been at the rate in history that the nation is at now, things are looking up. We have more companies moving into Louisiana, more people getting jobs, but we need to have those folks that would otherwise not be in the labor force engaged. And when child care runs $6,000 a month, think about that. Child care for an infant, $6,000 a month is on average what it is in Louisiana, and we all know that there are places that folks pay a lot more than that. When you have that percentage of your income going out the door, when there is also the gender gap, women in Louisiana earning 69 cents a dollar from their male counterparts, and don't be African American like myself or Latino, we're going to earn even less, which means that you have to make that choice about, am I going to be in the labor force, or may I stay at home and take care of my child?
Equal pay is the law, and as we've discussed at the legislature on more than one occasion, you know, small business owners want to follow the law. A frivolous lawsuit can put a small business owner out of business overnight, especially in this state, because of our litigious climate and because of our jury trial threshold being at $50,000. So if they don't want a lawsuit, so they want to follow the law. So, but awareness is key, and we've talked, as we've talked at the Capitol about equal pay awareness campaigns and being sure that people understand the law and what it is and how they should follow it. We think that's important, and we've remain committed to doing that. Our fear with some of the legislation that has come up to potentially address, in some folks' opinion, address equal pay, we don't believe it did, because it was chock-a-block full of ways to sue an employer, and that's the part that gives us pause. And so we have to fight against that sort of thing.
Do you guys have a proposal of something that you could support in the way of equal pay?
We're happy to work with y'all as we have. I mean, if we can look at something that is not egregious in the sense of creating a new cause of action or creating a situation where an employer is kind of always on the defensive, or is in the position where they're basically policing conversations that go on between workers. This conversation about worker pay, worker secrecy, pay secrecy. You know, if you go up to your counterpart at the water cooler and ask them how much they're getting paid, that's an uncomfortable conversation to have in the South, particularly because we just have certain ways of doing things down here, as we were talking about earlier. But you know, the bottom line is you don't want to all of a sudden have a lawsuit on your hands because of the work, because of the climate.
I've made this comment, and Dawn and I are friends, and this is meant with no disrespect whatsoever. But the reality is, to suggest that you guys will support something else, we have this debate every year. You guys come to the table and you're just opposed, and you give the standard boilerplate reasons. But if you really believe that equal pay for women is something that should be done, why don't you guys ever come to the table with an alternative? If you say you can't be for A, why don't you offer B? I mean, we don't have a patent on the best or only answer. Right. We're open to suggestions. And maybe you guys have a suggestion that gets us to where we want to go, albeit different from the approach we have. But to just say no and to give the same reason why a woman should not be paid as much as a man because you're afraid of a lawsuit, well, if we use that as our guiding post, no one would have any rights, because you'd be afraid that every time you challenged some impropriety or some violation of someone's rights, we'd be afraid of being sued. If you are violating the law, if you're treating people unequal, then there probably should be a lawsuit.
All right, Senator,
because everyone should be
equal.
equal.
Let's get back to the
Absolutely.
studio audience. We've got a couple of other questions. And Makisha, you've not had a question yet. Tell us where you're from, who you represent, and your question from one of the panelists.
Keisha Jackson, I work for the Department of Children and Family Services. And my question is, according to the National Council for State Legislatures, entering into 2019, 20 other states have increased their minimum wage. And as we know, our education system here in Louisiana is great, but according to my peers and some other millennials, we are Louisiana educated and Texas paid. How does the state of Louisiana retain and recruit skilled labor and compete with other states who have already increased their minimum wage, and particularly also our neighboring state, as you already mentioned, in Arkansas?
Well, Dr. Sullivan, I think you can answer this. And I think this goes into something that people don't really discuss, but Louisiana's population, and you cannot blame Katrina, has basically been stagnant for the past 20, 30 years. It just doesn't change. So you're not getting people pouring into the state, dying to be here. In fact, you're perhaps losing people who could be valuable. So I'm curious about that aspect of it, and also what she's asking.
So I think there are a couple of different parts to the argument. You know, the minimum wage issue is certainly something that we need to have a discussion about, but let's broaden the lens a bit, because you're right. How do we lift the people that are here out of poverty is a different discussion than should we raise the minimum wage. There's a case to be made to raise the minimum wage, no question. But we have to at the same time provide training opportunities for the people that are here. To raise the minimum wage without providing the dollars for education and training will not succeed long term. That's my perspective. You know, I'll just share with you, in the economic development space, there's a ratio of 1:7. For every one professional engineer, there are typically 2 people that are educated at the baccalaureate degree level and 7 technicians to support the engineering position. If we want our best and brightest to be educated in Louisiana and stay in Louisiana, let's make sure that we have the skilled trades that you described so well earlier. Let's make sure that we have the workforce to support those professional engineering positions, or in whatever field we may be talking about. So I think we have to grow our own. The reality is Louisiana will not import the labor needed to be the state that we all want. And so we have to grow our own. Investments in education are the way to change that.
Panelists, we have not heard from Andrea A.G. yet. Let me get to her first. You drove in from a distance tonight. Tell us where you're from, who you're representing.
I'm Andrea A.G. I'm at the Workplace Justice Project at Loyola Law Clinic.
Okay. You have a question?
I do. My question is for business. How does business respond to the fact that low wages necessarily means that taxpayers must subsidize those programs that help low-wage workers meet necessary cost of living, such as food and housing?
Well, our small business owners are reporting record numbers of trends where they're increasing wages. So currently, ever since the tax cuts were made at the federal level, they have been able to respond by increasing wages. So that is no longer, the tax burden is no longer their number one issue that they're constantly fighting. The regulations aren't as high as they were, and so they're able to kind of unleash a little bit and kind of grow and see where they want to go. And what they've been able to do over the past year, we've been at record levels on our optimism index that we have been doing for 45 years. And it basically shows a very positive trend, even with the slight dips that have occurred just in the last month. That's back to where it was, which is positive feedback on job creation, pay increasing compensation, and expanding capital at their businesses as far as inventory or expanding their facilities. So, I mean, the question, to your question specifically, you know, our business owners, our small business owners are out there doing what they can to raise wages when it makes sense for their business. But if they're in a rural area of Louisiana where there is not much going on in the way of the economy and not much growth happening in their area, which, as you know by what you do, I'm sure you've seen the parts of the state that are just not thriving, that are not New Orleans, not Lafayette, not Baton Rouge, not Lake Charles. Those areas, they're doing what they can to pay what they can. And so, again, we hate this feeling of making the business owner the demon or the bad guy for not doing what everybody thinks they should be doing, but we have a terrible tax structure here in our state. If we had a simpler tax structure and small business owners weren't paying 67% more than a big business does to be in tax compliance with our messed up tax code, maybe they could even do more as it relates to increasing wages. So there are a lot of parts and pieces. We're at a place in our state where we can make a lot of changes and we could do the right things to move forward. But the fact that one of the things, and to the senator's point about us coming with a solution, our focus is currently this session is going to be on moving to centralized sales tax collection, because we have such a messed up system. Louisiana gets an F in our tax structure and our sales tax structure, and we need to do something about that. And there's a small thing that we can do, but we're going to get a lot of pushback on it. But that's our focus, because at the end of the day, if we can do that and save a business owner on that end, again, where it relates to tax compliance and tax everything, you know, then they can do other things. So I don't want to.
Let me get some closing comments now because we're wrapping up our time. Probably why don't we get with you? Some final thoughts briefly.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for being here. Your being voices in the community, being out there, making a difference, speaking up. One of the things that we find most successful is when we have people from all over the state come to the committee hearing, in those legislators' districts who think that minimum wage is not a big deal. I dare say that every single member of the Senate and House have people, large percentages of people in their districts that will benefit from the minimum wage. But let's assume some don't. We don't have the luxury of being myopic in our view on how we raise Louisiana up. We raise it up by everybody getting a living wage. That makes our community stronger. We will continue to fight for that. We'd ask that you continue to support, write letters to members of the legislature, take time if you can. Come out, many of you can't because you're working, but those who can, come out and let your voices be heard. We're going to increase the minimum wage. It may be incremental and it may not be nearly where it should be, but we're going to keep fighting to make sure that men and women in Louisiana make a living wage and that women make equal pay to every man's pay.
All right, thank you, sir. You have a brief wrap?
Well, thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you for doing this and having this great discussion. You know, to wrap it up for us is, you know, our business owners want to be out there. They want to follow their dream and they want to create jobs and do the right thing and keep them, retain great employees. So we want to do everything we can to work for a better Louisiana as well.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight and thank Dawn especially too. I believe that civil discourse is important. Absolutely. And it's a pleasure to be a part of the civil discourse. Tonight was focused on the employee side of things, the worker side of things, but we work for employers as well at the Louisiana Workforce Commission. We have incumbent worker training, we have SBET. Small businesses get up to $3,000 per employee for training, and we have many small businesses throughout Louisiana that take care of that. It's through helping our businesses, supporting our businesses, but supporting our people too, that we can be a better Louisiana, and that's what we all want. We need to work towards that.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Very good. You know, first of all, thank you to each one of you. Thank you to the panelists. Certainly thank you to Senator Carter and his colleagues in the legislature for the level of stability that has been created. Thank you to Governor Edwards for tremendous support as well. The one thing I would leave you with is this. We have done an amazing job in Louisiana of funding merit-based aid in something that we refer to as TOPS. Imagine if we put the same level of emphasis on need-based aid for those adults and students who simply don't have the resources to both attend colleges and universities and take care of life expenses. We could change the future of Louisiana with those kinds of investments.
We have run out of time for our question and answer segment right now. We want to thank our panelists once again, Senator Carter, Ms. Starnes, Secretary DeJoie, and Dr. Sullivan for the insight on this month's topic. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments.
Complicated topic again.
Boy, it sure is.
No
answers don't come easy, do they?
No, they don't. But we heard a lot of things. I think addressing that complicated taxing system is one of the things to look at. And the problem of people not wanting to come to Louisiana is a problem, isn't it, Andre?
It certainly is. And I think there's another item on the agenda for the legislature.
Indeed. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We encourage you to visit our website at lpb.org/public square. While you're there, watch additional interview clips. You may also comment on tonight's show by clicking on the social media tab. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it's easy. Just click on it. A Supreme Court ruling last May permits sports betting in any state. Attempts, though, to permit in Louisiana failed last legislative session. This April, there will be another push to legalize it. Some suggest that proceeds should go to early education, but some say that we've dedicated too much already. Join us next month for What Are the Odds? Sports Betting in Louisiana, here on Louisiana Public Square. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.